Thanks for clicking enjoy the full story. I never expected my life to change because of a stray cat. I moved into this little bungalow a little over a year ago, wanting peace and quiet after a messy breakup. I thought a cozy home on the edge of town would be the perfect fresh start. I didn't expect anyone to be in and out of my life much, but I was wrong. Luna, or whatever her name was, showed up at my doorstep one rainy evening and completely flipped everything upside down. She was tiny, almost feral looking, with a tangled mess of black and white fur. Her eyes, bright, curious and wide, peered up at me from under the front steps. I crouched down, unsure what to do. I wasn't exactly a cat person, but I wasn't heartless either. I gave her some food, hoping she'd go on her way. But she didn't. Instead, Luna made herself at home on my porch, and every evening, she came back for more food, meowing insistently. I figured she'd wander off once the weather cleared up, but Luna had other plans. Soon, she was waiting for me on the front porch at all hours of the day. One morning I opened the door, and there she was, curled up on the doormat as if it had been her spot all along. It wasn't long before she worked her way into my life. First, she started following me around the yard while I watered the plants. Then she sneaked into the house through the open door and made herself at home on the couch. I didn't mind. Her presence was oddly comforting. Luna was different from other animals. She didn't just want food, she wanted attention. She'd nuzzle against my legs while I cooked dinner, curl up on the couch while I worked on my laptop, and follow me from room to room like I was her person. I had to admit I kind of liked it. But I knew she wasn't mine. She didn't belong to me, and I wasn't about to get attached. I'd heard the whispers around the neighborhood about Eleanor, the woman who lived 2 blocks over. Luna's real owner. They'd always had a strange relationship, at least from what I could gather. People said Eleanor was a bit of a recluse, someone who wasn't too friendly with the neighbors. But she was Luna's owner, and I had to respect that. It wasn't until the night I ran into Eleanor that I realized just how complicated things were getting. I had stepped out to grab the mail when I saw her standing at the end of the sidewalk, looking at my house. Her face was set, tight with something I couldn't quite place. As soon as she saw me, she marched over, her boots clicking on the pavement with an urgency I hadn't seen before. "Jessica, have you seen Luna?" Eleanor asked, her voice shaking slightly. I blinked, caught off guard. "Luna? No, not lately." "Why?" Eleanor didn't look convinced. "She's been gone for days now. I've put up flyers, called the shelter. I'm worried." Her eyes were wide with concern, the kind of worry that only comes from losing something you love. "I'm sorry. I haven't seen her around," I said, even though I felt a tiny twinge of guilt. I hadn't exactly been forthcoming about the fact that Luna had been living in my house for the past few days. Eleanor didn't seem to believe me, but she nodded curtly. "If you see her, let me know. She's been my companion for years. I just can't understand why she's gone." As she turned to leave, I watched her walk down the street, her shoulders slumped in defeat. It was clear she was desperate. And there I stood, holding the guilt of a secret that I wasn't sure I could keep for much longer. It had been a few days since I last saw Eleanor. I was sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me, when I heard the familiar sound of paws on the wooden floor. Luna was padding into the room, her tail flicking back and forth in that way she did when she was feeling particularly proud of herself. She jumped up onto the table, circling around my coffee mug as if she were inspecting it, then settled on top of my papers. Her eyes were half closed in contentment, her purring filling the room. "You're so spoiled," I muttered to her, but it didn't stop me from petting her. I liked having her around. There was something so comforting about her presence. It made the house feel less empty, less lonely. But I couldn't deny that this situation was becoming problematic. I wasn't sure what it was about Luna that made me hesitate when it came to giving her back to Eleanor. Maybe it was the way she'd snuggled into my lap every evening, or how she seemed to choose me over her original owner. Maybe I was getting too attached. But what if Eleanor didn't really care about Luna the way I did? That night, I sat on the couch, Luna curled up beside me. I tried to read a book, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Eleanor. I didn't want to get in the middle of whatever was going on between them, but I also didn't want to lose Luna. As I stroked Luna's soft fur, I heard a faint knock on the door. My heart skipped a beat. I knew who it was without even looking. I stood up slowly, walking to the door with a sense of dread. When I opened it, Eleanor was standing there, holding a stack of flyers. Her eyes were tired, but she smiled weakly. "Jessica, have you seen Luna?" she asked again, her voice filled with an edge of desperation. I felt a pang in my chest. This time I couldn't lie. "I have," I said quietly. "She's here with me." Eleanor's face froze for a moment, her eyes locking onto mine. The tension in the air was palpable, and for a brief second, I thought she might break down in front of me. She didn't though. Instead, she gave a stiff nod. "I should have known," she muttered, almost to herself. "She's always had a way of doing what she wants." I stepped aside, letting her into the house. My heart pounded in my chest. I had no idea what to say, how to explain why I hadn't returned Luna sooner. I had no idea if I even had a good excuse. Eleanor walked slowly through the living room, scanning the room until her eyes landed on Luna, still curled up on the couch. Luna's ears perked up, and she stood, stretching lazily before trotting over to Eleanor. Eleanor knelt down, her fingers reaching out for the cat, who rubbed against her in that familiar needy way. For a moment everything seemed normal. But then, Eleanor stood up, brushing her hands off on her jeans. "I came to get her, Jessica." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "No. I don't want her to go." The silence between Eleanor and I hung in the air like a thick fog. I could feel the weight of her gaze, her disappointment, and maybe a little bit of anger. Luna, who had been lounging on the couch with her usual aloof attitude, suddenly perked up at the mention of her name, as if she could sense the tension. She padded over to me, rubbing against my leg as though she was choosing sides. I stood there, not sure what to do. It had been clear from the moment she knocked on my door that this wasn't just about Luna anymore. It was about something much bigger. I had crossed a line, even if I hadn't meant to. But it didn't make it any easier to accept the reality of the situation. You knew she was mine, Eleanor said, her voice steady but tinged with frustration. You knew how much she means to me. Why didn't you just tell me she was here? I bit my lip, trying to hold back the wave of guilt that was crashing over me. I didn't mean for it to happen, I said, my voice small. She just showed up and I didn't know what to do. She was so sweet. I didn't want her to leave. Eleanor let out a sharp breath, running a hand through her hair. I don't understand you, Jessica. You took her in, and now you're trying to make her yours. She's not your cat. She's not some stray you can keep. I flinched at her words. I knew they were true, but the harshness of them stung. I never meant for it to get like this, I said, my voice cracking. She just started coming around, and I didn't want to push her away. I thought maybe she was better off here. Eleanor's face softened, but only slightly. She crossed her arms over her chest, her brow furrowed. You don't get it, do you? I've been searching for her for days. She's my family, Jessica. I've had her since she was a kitten. I'm the one who raised her, the one who took care of her when she was sick, the one who fed her every day. I'm the one who promised to keep her safe. I nodded slowly, trying to understand. But the more she talked, the more I realized how much I had been ignoring. This wasn't just about a cat. This was about a relationship, about trust, care, and a deep emotional bond that I had never really understood until now. I get it, I said quietly, stepping back. And I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get in the way of what you two had. Eleanor stared at me for a long moment, her eyes piercing through me. Then, without saying another word, she turned and walked over to the couch where Luna was now sitting, looking up at her with wide eyes. The two of them shared a brief, almost quiet moment. It was clear that Luna recognized her. She purred softly, nuzzling into Eleanor's hand as if nothing had happened. I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. The bond they shared was undeniable, something that I could never replace, no matter how much I cared about Luna. I've been selfish, I said, my voice soft but full of remorse. I didn't want to let her go, but I realize now. She belongs with you. Eleanor didn't say anything for a while. She just stared at Luna, who seemed completely content with the situation, as if nothing was wrong. I watched them, feeling a strange mixture of relief and loss. It wasn't like I wanted to keep Luna forever. I knew I had to do the right thing. I just wasn't sure how to let go. Eventually Eleanor spoke. Her voice was quiet, but there was a hardness in it that I hadn't heard before. You know, Jessica, this isn't easy for me either. But I have to do what's best for her. I can't keep letting her wander off, trying to find someone else to take care of her. She's not a stray anymore. I nodded, my throat tightening. No, I understand. The truth was, I had known from the beginning that Luna wasn't really mine. She'd chosen me, but that didn't mean I had the right to keep her. It didn't mean I had the right to step in between her and the woman who had raised her. But that didn't make it hurt any less. Eleanor stood up from the couch and gently coaxed Luna into her arms. The cat didn't fight her, as if she had been waiting for this moment all along. I stood frozen, unsure whether to say something or just let it go. My eyes followed them as they moved toward the door. I'll take good care of her, Eleanor said, pausing at the threshold. Promise. She's family. And just like that, they were gone. I stood in the doorway for a long time after they left, feeling the empty space where Luna used to be. It was like a part of me was missing, a part one didn't even know I'd grown so attached to until it was gone. For a while, I just stared at the empty spot on the couch where she'd slept every night, my heart heavy with regret and confusion. I hadn't meant for it to happen this way. But in the end, I knew it was for the best. That night, I sat in the quiet house trying to focus on my work, but all I could think about was Luna. Where was she? Was she okay? Did she miss me at all? The questions bounced around in my mind, making it impossible to concentrate. I tried not to feel guilty, but it was hard. I had taken Luna in when she needed someone, and now I had to let her go. I didn't know if I'd made the right decision, but I hoped she'd be happier with Eleanor. I hoped she'd find the peace and comfort she had in the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to a soft sound outside my window. I opened the blinds, half expecting to see Luna sitting there, waiting. The morning after Luna left was oddly quiet. The usual hum of my apartment felt heavier, more suffocating, without the soft pitter-patter of Luna's paws or her occasional meow when she demanded attention. It had been 2 days since she went back to Eleanor, but the silence still felt like a presence in itself. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting back to her, where she was, how she was settling in with Eleanor, and if she ever thought of me. I knew I had made the right decision, but it didn't make the ache in my chest any less. By the 3rd day, I'd started to settle into a new routine. The emptiness didn't feel as overwhelming, but I couldn't help but notice how my apartment still felt incomplete. The absence of Luna was like an unfinished sentence, a chapter that had been abruptly closed before it was done. That was when the knock came. At first, I thought it was just the neighbor asking about the noise from earlier in the week. I opened the door without a second thought, but when I saw Eleanor standing there, a tight expression on her face, I froze. She was holding a small white cardboard box in her hands. For a moment, neither of us said anything. It was as if the world had paused, and all the tension that had built between us came rushing back. I had expected this moment to come, but not so soon. "Jessica," she said finally, her voice softer than I had anticipated. "I need to talk to you." "Sure," I said, stepping aside to let her in. There was something in her tone that made my heart skip a beat. She didn't look angry anymore, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. She walked into the living room and set the box down on the coffee table. Her movements slow, deliberate. She didn't sit immediately, just stood there, looking down at the box as though it contained something too fragile to touch. "I didn't know what to do," she started, looking up at me with a mix of frustration and concern. "I thought I was doing the right thing by taking her back, but she's not happy. She's been acting out ever since we got home. I thought she'd settle in, but she's been restless, constantly meowing at the door, like she's looking for someone. I don't think she's comfortable yet." My heart sank. I hadn't even considered how Luna would feel after being torn away from the only place she knew. I'd assumed that Eleanor, with her love for Luna, would be able to make her feel safe again. But it seemed that I had underestimated the emotional toll this had on both of them. "I didn't want to bring her back," Eleanor continued, sitting down on the couch with a sigh. "But I had to. I can't let her live like this. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about her needing to be with me where she belongs. And you're right. She does belong with me, but," she trailed off, her voice growing softer, "she's not the same anymore. She's not as playful, not as affectionate. It's like she's lost part of herself." I felt the sting of guilt rush back. I'd been selfish. I hadn't thought about the emotional bond that Eleanor and Luna had, the way they fit together like pieces of a puzzle. I had gotten so caught up in the idea of keeping Luna, of having something to fill the emptiness in my life, that I hadn't considered how it would affect both of them. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my throat tight. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I didn't want to be alone." Eleanor's expression softened, and she sighed, rubbing her forehead. "Get it. You do. But I think we both need to stop pretending like Luna's just some pet we can pass around. She's a living, breathing creature with her own feelings, and we need to respect that. I know you care about her, Jessica. Can see it. But we both need to make sure she's happy." I nodded, my eyes welling up. I had never realized how deep the connection between Eleanor and Luna went, how much love and history they shared. And in that moment, it hit me just how much I had disrupted that bond. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice barely audible. "I want to fix it, but I don't know how." Eleanor's gaze softened, and for a brief moment, I saw the woman I had met months ago, the one who had been understanding and patient, not the one who had shown up at my door with frustration and hurt in her eyes. She stood up and walked over to the box, gently lifting the lid. Inside, there was a small collar with a tag, engraved with Luna's name and Eleanor's phone number. "I thought maybe you'd want to see this," she said, holding it up for me to see. "It's Luna's collar. She wore it when she was with you. I thought maybe it would help remind her of the time she spent here." I reached for the collar, feeling a pang of sadness as I ran my fingers over the cool metal. Luna's collar, the one I had seen her wear every day, was now a reminder of everything I had lost. "I didn't want to take her away from you," Eleanor said, her voice quiet but firm. "But I don't think we can keep pretending that this is okay. Luna needs to be where she's most comfortable, even if that means being with me." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "I understand," I whispered. "I just want her to be happy." Eleanor looked down at the collar in my hands before meeting my eyes. "She will be. I'm sure of it. But right now she needs time. She's been through a lot and so have you. Maybe we both just need a little space to figure out what comes next." I nodded again, feeling a sense of finality in her words. She was right. There was no easy way to fix this, no quick solution. It was going to take time for both of us to heal and find a way to move forward. But I also knew that Luna's happiness had to come first. "I'll make sure she's okay," Eleanor said, standing up to leave. "I promise." As she walked out the door, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd made the right choice in the end. I had tried to do what I thought was best, but now I was left with a lingering sense of uncertainty. Luna was with the person she belonged with, but at what cost? I sat there for a long time, staring at the collar in my hands, feeling like I had just closed a door that couldn't be reopened. The weight of my decision was heavy, but I knew I had to trust that it was the right one. And as the door clicked shut behind Eleanor, I could only hope that one day, Luna would understand. The days that followed Eleanor's visit were eerily quiet. The space that had once been filled with the constant hum of Luna's presence now felt hollow. It was as if a part of me had been ripped out, leaving only a lingering ache that I couldn't shake. I went through the motions of my daily life, but everything felt muted, like the world had lost its color. I hadn't expected to feel this empty. The decision had seemed so clear at the time. Luna needed to be with Eleanor, where she was loved and where she belonged. But now that she was gone, I was left with the overwhelming realization that I had no idea how to move forward without her. I tried to focus on work, but even that felt like a chore. My clients didn't deserve my distracted attention, and I knew it. So I did my best to bury my feelings, keeping them at bay while I answered emails and sat in on calls. But no matter how hard I tried to push it all down, there was one thought that kept resurfacing. What if I had made the wrong choice? I hadn't seen or heard from Eleanor since that day, and part of me wondered if she regretted bringing Luna back to me. What if she thought I was too much of a mess to be trusted with Luna's care? What if she felt like she made a mistake? I couldn't help but replay her words over and over again, the hurt in her eyes when she spoke about Luna's distress. I knew she was right about one thing. Luna wasn't the same after all of this, and neither was I. On the 5th day, I couldn't take it anymore. The silence was suffocating, and the need for closure was overwhelming. I knew I had to talk to Eleanor again. I needed to hear from her, directly, whether Luna was truly okay or if I had ruined everything. I dialed Eleanor's number, the screen of my phone lighting up with her contact information. My heart pounded in my chest as it rang, each second feeling like an eternity. When she finally picked up, I almost felt relieved. At least I wouldn't have to wonder anymore. Jessica. Her voice sounded cautious, like she was unsure of what I wanted or how to approach this conversation. Eleanor, hi, I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to remain calm. I just wanted to check in, see how Luna's doing. I know it's been a few days, and I just want to know that she's okay. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment I thought she might hang up. But then finally she spoke. She's doing better, she said quietly, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. She's still adjusting, but she's eating, playing with her toys again, and spending more time on the couch with me. I think the worst of it is over. She just needed some time. A wave of relief washed over me, though I knew there was still a long way to go before things would feel right again. I'm glad to hear that, I said, trying to sound composed. I wanted to make sure she wasn't suffering. She's not suffering, Jessica, Eleanor reassured me. She's just a little confused. It's normal after something like this. But I'm making sure she feels safe. And I can tell she's starting to settle in. I let out a small, bittersweet smile at her words. It was strange hearing someone else talk about Luna like this, like she was their responsibility now, their companion to care for and nurture. I had always been the one to comfort her, to watch over her, to make her feel secure. But now I had to accept that it was Eleanor who was doing that for her. I know it's been hard, Eleanor continued, for both of us. But I think you were right. Luna needs to be with me. I don't think I could have let her stay with you, no matter how much I wanted to. She's been through too much. I bit my lip, feeling a mix of guilt and acceptance. Eleanor was right. Luna had a bond with her that ran deeper than mine, a bond that couldn't be replaced. It was time for me to step aside, even if it hurt more than I could put into words. I understand, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I want her to be happy. And I want you to be happy too. I know, Eleanor said, her voice softening. I just want you to know that Luna is okay. I'll keep you updated if you want. I know you care about her. But right now, I think we both need some time apart to figure out what's next. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I think that's for the best. There was a long silence between us, and for a moment, neither of us seemed to know what to say next. Finally, Eleanor broke the quiet. Thank you for being understanding, she said quietly. It means a lot to me. I swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that were threatening to spill over. You're welcome. I just want what's best for her. We exchanged a few more polite words before hanging up. As soon as the phone clicked off, I felt the familiar ache creep back into my chest. The wound was still fresh, but it wasn't as raw as before. I had to believe that Luna was where she was supposed to be, even if it meant she wouldn't be in my life the way I had imagined. I stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the bustling city below. The world was moving on as it always did. Life was continuing whether I was ready for it or not. And as the minutes ticked by, I couldn't help but wonder if Luna would ever come back into my life, or if the love she once shared with me was something I had lost forever. But one thing I knew for sure. I would never stop loving her, even if she wasn't mine to love anymore. Time had a funny way of working, slowly, steadily, and without mercy. It felt like I had lost a part of myself when Luna left, and no matter how much I tried to fill the void with distractions, it didn't seem to work. Weeks passed, but the ache remained. I kept busy with work, sure, but there was a persistent emptiness that crept into my thoughts every time I had a quiet moment. My apartment felt lonelier than ever. The space that had once been filled with the sound of Luna's paws tapping on the hardwood floors now echoed with a painful silence. Every corner I looked into reminded me of her. The spot where she used to nap by the window, the space beside the couch where she'd curl up in the evenings, waiting for me to return from work. I thought about Eleanor's words often. She'd said Luna was doing better, and part of me felt relief, even if I wasn't sure if I fully believed it. I tried to push the doubt away, reminding myself that Luna was in good hands. I had to trust Eleanor, even though the idea of never seeing Luna again felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. But as days turned into weeks, I started to do the one thing I'd been avoiding. I began to wonder what my life would look like without Luna. Would I ever get over this? Would I ever be able to fully move on? It was a question I couldn't answer. It wasn't just about the absence of Luna. It was about the absence of something larger. She had been a part of my routine, a part of my identity. And now that she was gone, I was left to piece together the parts of myself I had lost. I wasn't sure I was ready to let go of the hope that things would somehow return to normal. But I also knew that holding on to something that wasn't mine to hold anymore would only cause me more pain. So I made a decision. It was time to let go, at least in part. I couldn't keep living in the past, and I had to try to move forward. Slowly, I began clearing out the remnants of Luna's life that still lingered in my apartment. I packed away her toys, her bowls, and the blanket she used to sleep on. It wasn't about forgetting her, but about creating space for something new. A new chapter, even if it meant starting alone. I didn't expect it to be easy. I didn't expect to feel whole again, not yet. But I had to start somewhere. A few months after the phone call with Eleanor, I found myself sitting at a cafe, a warm cup of coffee in my hands, staring out the window. The rain had started to fall softly, a quiet, steady rhythm against the glass. The world outside seemed peaceful, almost detached from the chaos I felt inside. I'd been trying in my own way to heal. I took long walks in the park, read books I'd put off for months, and started volunteering at a local animal shelter. I couldn't have a dog, not yet anyway, but being around the animals who needed care helped fill the emptiness, even if only temporarily. It was on one of those walks just a week ago when I first saw her. Luna. It was her, or at least it looked like her. A small, orange tabby, darting in and out of the bushes near the shelter. My heart skipped a beat as I walked closer, cautiously hoping that I wasn't imagining things. The cat glanced up at me, and for a split second, I swore I saw recognition in her eyes. I wasn't ready for the wave of emotions that hit me. Not then, not in that moment. But I couldn't help it. I crouched down, holding out my hand slowly, trying to coax the cat closer. For a moment, the cat hesitated, watching me with those cautious eyes. But then, as if she recognized something familiar, she took a hesitant step forward, and then another. It was the same warmth, the same softness that Luna used to have. I almost didn't believe it, but as I reached out and gently stroked the cat's fur, it was like a piece of my heart clicked back into place. It wasn't Luna, of course, but it was enough to remind me that healing wasn't just about time. It was about finding pieces of ourselves in unexpected places. The world had a way of giving us what we needed, even if it wasn't exactly what we wanted. I stood up, looking around to see if anyone was watching, then tucked the small orange tabby under my arm, holding her close. I wasn't sure what the future would hold, or if this little cat would become a part of my life. But in that moment I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could be whole again.